I think it might be time to give up on some players.
Inside, and a beauty! Hall running free! Bryce Hall inside the 10! He's gonna score!
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Jets with Tigo. My name is Tigo, and today we're going to be talking about players that are kind of on the roster right now that it might be time for the New York Jets to move on from. And before you start typing anything, no, Zach Wilson is not on this list. I did not put him on this list for very specific reasons. I think Zach Wilson's failings are, yes, of course, a product of his own inability to adapt to the NFL game and blah, 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 blah. But there are things in place that now can help support Zach Wilson, where I think before for some of these players, there were situations that were there to help support them and to get them going in the right direction. And these players, they just haven't been able to live up to that at all. So that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about 4 players that are currently on the New York Jets roster that it might be time to just give up on. And I'm going to start with a guy that I wish I didn't have on this list. I really wanted him to work out. I thought he had the best ability to transition from safety to linebacker when we drafted the 2 safeties to transition to linebacker, and that's Hamza Ngata out of Florida State. It's just unfortunate because we got a guy who had a ton of potential in him in the 6th round with pick 186, and it just didn't work out. The same problems and concerns that he had in college were constantly being injured and inability to stay on the field. We saw that at the next level. Hamza Ngata has been injured every year since being drafted, hasn't been able to stay on the field, and when he's been on the field, he hasn't been able to play really all that impactful. Hamza is not the type of player that when you see him, you're like, oh my gosh, I see that guy, I notice him on the field the same way that you looked at maybe when Jamie Sherwood, his running mate, another player that got drafted in that same draft as a safety. Every time Hamza Ngata is on the field, you don't really notice it, but every time Jamie Sherwood is on the field, he is in and around the ball, he is making tackles, he is being a productive member of the team. You just don't see that from Hamza. And with a team that's in a go-for-it mentality, let's go get a chip, let's go do it, and with some linebackers still out there in the free agent market, it might be time to give up on Hamza Ngata and move on. I think the next player that's on this list is more of a thing of now you're just in a really, really crowded room, and it has less to do with your ability and more to do with your value, and that's Bryce Hall, the cornerback. Obviously, in 2020, when you get a player like Bryce Hall in round 5 with pick 158, and he comes into the NFL and proves that he can play as a starting caliber cornerback in the NFL, that's a massive value. But you could see that this staff didn't necessarily believe in him all that much because in consequent years, we went out and we drafted Michael Carter, we went and drafted Sauce Gardner, we went and signed DJ Reed, and if there was a belief in Bryce Hall to be able to play at a relatively high level, we wouldn't have made all those moves. Now, I understand depth is king, and maybe they were just trying to get as much talent in a cornerback room as possible. I get that. But then in the following year, after he's drafted, they go out and they get Brandon Echols, who, yes, is suspended for like 1 game, which is something that we need to care about, obviously. And when given the opportunity, when Sauce missed a couple of snaps, when DJ Reed missed a couple of snaps, and Bryce Hall and Brandon Echols were available, they went with Brandon Echols, which I think is the right move. I actually like Brandon Echols more than I like Bryce Hall. But at this point in time, it might be time for the New York Jets to say, you know what, thanks, but it might be time for the New York Jets to move on from Bryce Hall. It's a matter of value, and you can only keep 53 guys, and I think that there are other guys on this team that deserve a roster spot more than Bryce Hall does, and it's the way the world works. Next player on this list is a guy that I really, really liked. I really, really wanted him to work out. My biggest video is talking about this guy, and that's Denzel Mims, wide receiver out of Baylor. We drafted him in the second round of 2020 with high aspirations. How do you find a guy who's 6'3", 210 pounds, runs a sub 4.4 40? Like the guy, is it sub 4.4? He runs a 4.4-ish 40. How do you get a guy with this high of a skill set, this much talent, and not get him to work? And it hasn't worked in any of the regimes that he's been a part of. And the biggest thing that I have a concern with is I'm giving him a pass on the food poisoning year. I had food poisoning last weekend, and I lost 6 pounds in 2 days. It was not good. Like, it was not fun. And Denzel Mims had a much worse, from what I was able to read, stint with food poisoning than I did. And I was out of commission. I couldn't get up. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't anything. And I'll give him a pass on that year. But to continually see in 3 different regimes, because remember, this is an Adam Gase draft pick, to see Adam Gase not be able to use Denzel Mims all of that well, to see Mike LaFleur come in not being able to use him all that well. And now Nathaniel Hackett is coming in, and it is a third regime, and you're hearing the same stories that we were hearing before about Denzel Mims not being able to learn the playbook, blah, 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 blah. Denzel Mims has a value out there. Somebody out there is going to look at Denzel Mims and be like, I'll take a flyer on a guy like that and send a draft pick that way. It might be time, because when you've got guys like Jason Brownlee on the come up, Xavier Gibson, Jerome Cap, Malik Taylor, these guys that are in the wings that could theoretically fill wide receiver 6, which is unfortunately what Denzel Mims is for this team. If giving him a brand new place, if giving him a new home is going to revitalize his career, I would say do it. I like Denzel Mims, but I think it might be time for the New York Jets to move on. And last but not least is one player that, again, I had a lot of high hopes for. 3rd round pick in the 2020 draft out of California, Ashton Davis, the safety. And it just keeps becoming apparent that this franchise does not believe that Ashton Davis can play the safety for this team. And that sucks to be able to, or it sucks that I have to say something like that, because I like Ashton Davis. I think it just goes to show, when it comes to certain players, that athleticism does not translate to being a good football player, because Ashton Davis is an elite athlete. He's fast, he's strong, he's quick, but he cannot process the game at a high enough level to play safety legitimately. And it's crazy, because like, you see us going out and, you know, signing Jordan Whitehead and LaMarcus Joyner so that he doesn't have to play time, because in the previous year he was playing time. And then LaMarcus Joyner goes out, so we trade for Chuck Clark, and we go in that same year, we get undrafted free agent Tony Adams, who was looked at more highly than Ashton Davis. That's not even including the fact that we got the undrafted free agent Trey Dean III this year, who seems to be higher up on the depth chart than Ashton Davis. Now, while I don't think that there is a value for a guy like Ashton Davis in the trade market, he will find a job somewhere as a special teamer, and that's good for him, but it might be time for the New York Jets to move on from Ashton Davis. With 53 spots, and that's all that the New York Jets have, you cannot be wasting spots on projects that you've seen already. If you're going to be keeping projects, it has to be guys that we haven't seen on the NFL and have the potential to hit that ceiling more likely than not. And when you look at guys like Ashton Davis and Denzel Mims and Bryce Hall and Hamza Ngata, none of these guys' ceiling and potential are higher than some of these other guys that are in those locker rooms already. And that's a sad thing to say, but that's the reality of the situation. Let me know if there's any other players that you think that it's time for the New York Jets to move on from in the comment section below. And last but not least, go Jets.